Hey everyone, it's time for episode 5. Ooh, episode 5. That means big changes, big
Oh yeah.
changes with my friend Jax Atlantis. He's an amazing tarot card reader, astrologer, and intuitive. And remember, Problematic is the podcast where we talk about controversial topics with even more controversial guests. Jax, how are you doing today? How's everything going?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling very controversial.
Let's do it then.
Yeah.
Let's do it then. So I know you are a triple Libra, right? Is that correct?
Quadruple if and quintuple if you're including Poseidon, which is this exoplanet. But yeah, quadruple.
Oh my gosh. So right now we're going through Libra South Node, and still we were talking about before we started recording Pluto and Cap. So you're
Yeah.
feeling a little bit, but like you said, you're ready. You're ready to go. You're ready
I'm
for
I'm pumped for it at this point. As of 10 years ago, not so much. When those would happen and I didn't even know that they were happening, I was like, why is this all going on? But yeah, no, it makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, I think what it is when you reach, your Saturn return, which I
Yeah.
assume you have, it's like we're ready to mature. We're ready to up level. We don't want to stay in our comfort zones. And, Libras are so good at reasoning things out. So I feel like you're probably just expanding in all sorts of beautiful ways right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bummer that you guys, your ruler Saturn gets such a bad rap. The Saturn return, it's difficult and it's stressful, but it coexists some of the most difficult lessons with some of the best level ups possible, or at least the opportunities for them. And the maturity is great, and it feels good to learn those lessons. But what's even more exciting is the fact that the universe like packaged them up for you like that. It will be like, here's a very toxic relationship and a great business opportunity, and here's an open window for some creative outlet, and then you have to decide what you're going to prioritize. And of course, with Saturn square Venus, I prioritized toxic relationships, which was a
No.
mistake, I found out. So I stopped well, I did it again, but then I stopped doing it completely. So
So that pattern's over, that cycle is over. You
yeah,
took all your
that's
power.
what I'm telling myself. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, you said it here on this podcast, on this YouTube channel. So it is
Yep.
spoken,
It's
it is
over.
done, right? It's over
Yeah.
now. It's over now. Well, I mean, Libra is it's Saturn's exaltation. So I
Yeah.
feel like Capricorns and Libras actually understand each other really well, even though, we're not supposed to work together. We're not supposed to be friends. We're not supposed to date, nothing like that. But I always found that I really get along well with Libra people because they're some of the most reasonable, well-cultured people I know. I'm not just saying that because you're on my show. I'm
I was
saying,
about to say thank you. Yeah.
yeah, no,
No, before my Saturn return, I was always in a state with Capricorns of a lot of envy, like a
mm,
lot of intimidation. I would always feel very outdone by Capricorn. So I'd project a lot of this bad intent. But post Saturn return, I have teamed up with more Capricorns, been in more Capricorn relationships, had more Capricorn connections of various types than ever before. And I see the greatness of Capricorn. Capricorn is very special. And the thing is, when we were in a society that you could argue may have had too much Capricornian energy and it almost too much traditionalism. Now that we are in a state of so much Uranus, there is a desperate need for a little bit of classical Capricorn right now in the collective. And even as a Libra with Aqua rising, with Gemini Mars, who loves the air energy, obviously,
yeah,
I see that we are going real heavy on a hyper Libraism, if you will,
yeah,
hyper Aquarianism, to
yeah,
a degree where we need a bit of Earth to kind of just tone
yeah.
it down a little
I could
bit.
see that. I could see
Yeah.
that because it's like everybody's just trying to go all the way out there instead of stick to any kind of common sense rules and just have some kind of ease of flow, and it's
Yeah.
this let's rewrite everything, especially when Uranus goes into Gemini. What is it, 2025? We're really going to start to rewrite a lot of rules, so we have to remember what are the basis of these rules, what is the backbone. Why?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to touch in 2025, and almost immediately after it gets there, we're going to have then a retrograde. It's going to hop back into Taurus, and then it's of course in 2026 going to re-enter. And what it and to me, the big thing to look out for there is the economy and
Mhm.
to look at currencies,
Yeah,
because to me, I see, and basically in 2025, when it first hits, we are going to essentially see a certain cryptocurrency. That's been my assumption, because digital and currency, it would make sense. It'd be talking about cryptocurrency. We're going to see one that looks in a way as though it's been crowned king. And then
yeah,
we are going to have a retrograde, which means there's something that will cause a loss of faith in a type of digital currency, which I can only assume would be like a security breach, something like that. It's going to
yeah.
touch back in, and a new king will be crowned. That's been my assumption the whole time. And I didn't know if that would be Bitcoin will be crowned king, and then Litecoin is crowned the new king, or what currencies exactly. But that's how I've been seeing it. It makes total sense for it to
It does
be
make
crypto,
sense. That does
you
make
know?
sense. And a lot of people, in our community, are waiting for the US dollar to fall, the fiat
Yeah.
currency. And I did the US dollar's chart a little while ago. And I said, okay, the Pluto return's not going to happen for another 15 years. And then after Uranus goes into Gemini, another 13. So my
Yeah.
assumption is that they're going to use the fiat currency to back this cryptocurrency or this electronic currency. And of course, I assume there's going to be some kind of civil war. I assume, because it seems like every time Uranus goes into Gemini for the US, there is some kind of war. And not that we're wishing that, and it's not that we're like
Right.
gung ho for war. It's not about that at all. It's just like astrologers pay attention to patterns.
Yeah. And I mean, even if it wasn't manifested as a war, there is most definitely a standoff. There are several types of standoffs happening at the same time. And it's also interesting because one of the things that I find so encouraging, and it's not from a hyper fixation on positivity and positive
Right.
thinking to make a better earth, and it's not that. The thing that I'm really excited about is the way that Uranus Gemini is going to affect the way that we're having these collective conversations.
Yeah.
If you look at Uranus Aries, and which I just sort of give them all little titles, like the revolution of the self-made person, the revolution of masculinity, the Me Too movement, several other things. Right now, we're in Uranus, Taurus, so the revolution of currencies, the revolution of the banking system, the revolution of survival. And then you have Uranus Gemini coming, which is the revolution of conversation, the revolution of children, and the revolution of people in context to technology, especially mobile technology. And so that revolution is a good one, because we currently as a species are having really ineffective conversations. We're
Agreed.
using the most ineffective forms of communicating. And so literally any revolution from that is a good one. Like you can't undo the way that we're currently talking and wind up with something bad, because it's currently just very it's either hyper nuanced
Mhm.
when you are attacking, or it has, or no, it's zero nuance when you're attacking and hyper nuance when you're defending, to a degree that's dishonest. It's just not
Yeah.
we're not these conversations that a lot of people are having, in the way that we're having them is not honest. They're not finished. They're not no one's holding space for the other side or
I
empathy,
completely agree. I completely
Yeah.
agree. I just remember being in high school debate class, and I feel
Yeah.
like these debates, both people would lose. Their
Yeah.
teacher would give them a D minus on both sides
Yeah.
at best, because they're not bringing out any facts. It's just based on feeling. It's so much,
Yeah.
right, ethos, right? Is that ethos the emotion? I always forget my Greek: ethos, pathos, logos. I know logos,
Yeah.
logic, but it's just a lot of ethos. And it was interesting because it was on Dr. Grande. Do you know who that is? Dr. Grande. He's
No.
okay. So he is a psychoanalyst, and he takes like current events, like this one was about Joe Biden. Is he too old to run? And he takes things from a very
Yeah.
neutral standpoint of a psychoanalyst. Okay. So he didn't sound politically right or left. He just sounded like somebody who was trying to have a reasonable conversation, which I commend him for, because there's not many people in this space that do that. So in the comments, people were celebrating that. But then again, there were a few people who were like, well, I don't want to see Trump versus Biden again. Like, I'm not going to vote for Trump because I'd rather have a cognitively impaired president. Like, that's my stupid. Right. But it's like, so I said to this person, I was like, all right, did he say those were your only two choices, or those are only two choices? So when people walk around,
I'm going to be running in 2024, so I'll be one of the choices. Yeah.
Oh, I love that, Jax. Yeah, I totally vote for you. You guys heard it here today. He's announcing it on this podcast. I love it. Jax Atlantis 2024. So it's like you said, not nuanced at all. Just like, here, like, I'm not voting for him because I'm going to vote for that because I don't like him, and I don't care if this guy's cognitively impaired. Like, really? Like, are we just going to assume that? So there's like a lot of faults in a lot of these discussions, a lot of faults and flaws, because it's like, we're just all in this premise almost that there's only two choices. It's not just political, it's anything. It's like, you have to have a winner and you have to have a definitive loser. And sometimes, regardless of who that winner is, it's like we almost have no control of that. That's what I'm sensing. And I feel like with Pluto and Aquarius, maybe people will start taking some ownership again, especially when Ingress is in the Gemini. Maybe the collective, this is my hope, my Pollyanna hope, that we'll all start taking charge again and taking our power back and stop investing it into the elite circles. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I love that. And I feel that there's a specific point where Pluto's going to hit right about 10 degrees Aqua. And we've got a ways before we get there. But, it's going to hit right about 10 degrees Aqua. And it's going to transit the south node of Neptune. And the moment it transits the south node of Neptune, there is a lot of this very cultish political energy that will finally be almost abolished invisibly, where a lot of people don't understand that they're getting so caught up in that. And a lot of people don't know that Saturn's transit over the south node of Neptune has really riled up a lot of that energy so far. Because, in the planetary nodes and the south node of Neptune specifically, you have a very, it's a very dark tone of Neptune. It's where, and it's predicated on my belief that Neptune's exaltation is actually in Leo rather than Cancer, which makes its fall position Aqua rather than making it Capricorn. A lot of people disagree, and that's fine. But the south node of Neptune being in Aqua, to me, has been, and some of the trends we've had over it have been very telling about the way people have been riled up. And the combination of the collective consciousness in Neptune and the collective unconscious and the collective sort of thought process in Aqua, the combination of them can be very dangerous. And it can also be very beautiful. It can be incredibly powerful, but it can also be very dangerous. And I think we've seen a lot of that sort of displayed with some of our Aqua transits over the last 3 years,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And now that Neptune is in Pisces and Saturn is in Pisces, I feel like a lot of people are in for kind of like a rude awakening. And the first thing I saw when I channeled into Saturn and Pisces, and I looked, of course, at the patterns, because this is what we do. This is when a lot of cults are formed. Okay. So, and for those of you who don't know at home, Jax grew up in a high demand church. Some people would call it a cult. And of course, we're not here to offend people. We're here to open your eyes, hoping to create some discourse that's going to help you critically think. But we're not here to purposely, intentionally offend anybody. But when you grow up in the Jehovah's Witness church, high demand church, I feel like there is a lot of this blurring of lines. And we see that now. We see that with celebrities, political figures. And then now we have the era of the new age celebrity, because 10 years ago, we really didn't have any, new age celebrities. We had,
Yeah.
Dolores Cannon, Sylvia Brown, both grandma types, very comforting grandma types that you would see on Montel Williams or Phil Donahue, for those of you
Right.
who remember him back in the day in the 80s. They wouldn't be doing these daily lives like Jax and I do, or our daily reels. So what do you think about what's going on here? Because I do know that there are some, I would say, people that have created some narratives, like these end times narratives, that kind of harken back to like the Jehovah's Witness church, or the church that my husband grew up in, Worldwide Church of God, that was very fixed mindset into the rapture. Now they're calling it solar flash. So what's your opinion on
Right.
that? What do the stars have to do with that?
Yeah. So first of all, solar flash is interesting, and there's definitely a lot of new names. But yeah, had made a video a few years back where I sort of talked about my experience using the bite model to identify cults, and just being like, here's behavioral control, informational control, thought control, and emotional control. Here's some examples that I experienced there. And for a long time, I had a definite refusal to I kept saying, no, it's just a religion. It's just a religion. It's not a cult, because there was part of me that was really having trouble just sort of accepting that. And what I have sort of joked about a few times, really since 2016, but more and more every year, sort of leading up to this building energy, is that watching the political sphere in the past 10 years has made me feel very young again, in the sense that I'm very familiar with this type of speech, and this speech really, really matters. And so when you have young folks who are talking about how we don't need the First Amendment, and they're very serious, they're very legitimately serious, like, we need to get rid of that.
Yeah.
When you have people that gravitate towards particular figures as if those figures matter, which they really don't,
Right.
this is very cultish behavior. Speaking from someone who was there for 15 years, I can say, like, a lot of these techniques are very similar. And so you'd look at essentially a unification of certain governmental agencies, certain news media organizations, and certain social media companies. And you'd look at the way that they are very much in lockstep with each other, and the types of what are essentially psych driving techniques to repeat something so many times, and using such similar or exact same phraseology that it comes out of the mouth of other people. And that if you are saying something that in any way rejects that or disagrees with that, even to the degree of nuance, then you are disfellowshipped. And so
Right.
seeing people, and well, it's called canceled. We call it canceled,
Yeah.
but disfellowshipped, you
Same.
are shunned.
No.
And this behavior is the antithesis of growth and evolution, and it's definitely the antithesis of love. It's the antithesis of empathy and understanding. Everything about the disfellowshipping concept, the canceling concept, it doesn't really work. And the one of the biggest problems is that there is a inherent lack of faith you have in other people when you do that, because you're suggesting, like, if I see someone walk up to me and they're just saying the most sexist stuff ever, they're saying the most racist comments ever, I have faith in myself and in other people to all make the judgment call individually, that we can all say, like, oh, that guy sucks,
Right.
this
Exactly.
guy's pulling some bullshit right now.
Right.
Like, I'm pretty confident about that, and I feel confident enough about the human species that we can make those assessments ourselves. And so yeah, it's very concerning to see any governmental agencies, let alone several of them, engaging in disfellowshipping behavior. That's
Yeah.
really concerning to
Yeah.
me.
Because it takes away any kind of intelligent discourse.
Yeah.
It does. And this cancel culture totally does remind me of it. It's like, all right, now you're in the outs. You can't be with us anymore. And it really does silence people. And people are silent, then they suffer and they're not heard. And I feel like just it's really made things difficult in the past few years for different voices or different perspectives to cut through. And I feel like that's why alternative media, which is an amazing thing, has really, skyrocketed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to be discerning. I'm not saying those people should be canceled or censored, but we have to trust people's discernment, their intelligence, their intuition to
Yeah.
listen to people who aren't, I mean, frankly, just like frankly full of shit. That's what it is,
Yeah.
because some people are full of shit and they are agenda driven. And the mainstream media is agenda driven. We know where most of their advertising comes from. I'm just going to say that that's where the news gets
Yeah.
funded by certain companies that, it's beneficial for them not to go against the narrative because of those companies are going to make money. And, that's Tucker Carlson. I feel like that's probably why he was canceled off of Fox News, because when you speak against those, those sponsors of the show, they're not going to get ad revenue. So it's just
Yeah,
always
and to me,
follow.
that's a perfect example of the hyper Libraism and hyper Aquarianism. And I hate to throw any of my own placements under the bus, but that's where you have too much of it, is a false stance of I'm trying to protect the well-being of other people by making sure that no one can be hurt. I'm trying to make sure that everyone's okay by not letting them talk and say they're rude and boisterous things. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of that.
It is a lot of that. And I feel
Yeah.
like this Capricorn world, I'll throw my placements under the bus now, it is falling apart, right? These
Yeah.
hierarchies, the institutions, they're falling apart. They're seeing their last days. Does that mean that they're going to completely implode? No, but there is something new brewing. And I want people to have patience too, because in order to go into a new era, some of those vestiges of the old era still need to be there. And we need to build, and I don't want to say build back better because that's Biden's thing, but we need to definitely repair what's not working. And when we create new things, we have to build them on a solid foundation of what's reliable and what is, most harmonious and what the collective wants. And that's where the Aquarian part comes in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So we talked about the mainstream media. With this Neptune and Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, like this solar flash thing, which I'm not 100% sold on. It just sounds very much like the rapture. Like what do you feel on that? Because that was such a big point of focus in these end times apocalyptic churches that it does make me a little nervous for people, who are clients and followers and whatnot.
Yeah, so what I would say, so a couple of things. So first of all, anyone having any belief that it's wonderful if you have a connection with that belief, I would just tell people to be very honest about where your beliefs come from, if they were told to you, and if they just so happen to sound like repackagings of earlier Christian prophecy. Because so much of what I see, whether it be the creation of new earth, in the Jehovah's Witness religion, it was the paradise earth. So basically there would be a very scary Armageddon, and then there would be a paradise earth that would come after that here in the physical world. And originally that was supposed to happen, of course, on 1914. And then it became, well, no, it's like the kid's born in 1914. Right. And then it became, no. So that was like the generation after that. And so they kept pushing it, and now they've actually changed it to Armageddon is not a day anymore. It's actually climate change, and that over the next several years, like Armageddon is a long process that will lead to us having salvation. So when I see a lot of these new prophecies come out, they essentially all gravitate towards the concept of a sudden explosion of good, in which all responsibility is taken off the individual and it's given to God in a way, or it will be a sudden bad, but then all the responsibility is taken off. And I would just tell people to understand that even if it doesn't seem like it, it's an incredibly comforting thing for us to imagine an apocalypse or a rapture, either one unanimously, good or bad, because then there's a feeling of at least like my responsibility is over that, or at least my confusion, my stress, my everything is
Yeah.
ended. And so I would tell people to think about whether or not they believe that checks out, whether or not that event really makes sense, and to villainize the suffering inherent in the world. I don't consider myself a Buddhist, but one thing I feel that they hit the nail on the head on was, of course, the concept of the recognition of suffering, and then of course the transcendence of suffering through the acceptance of suffering. That's a beautiful thing, and that if you imagine walking on a warm sandy beach, there's this funny thing about beaches where there's always this rocky path they put beforehand. And I always will take off my sandals to walk to the beach. And then halfway through, I'm like, okay, I'm stepping on these sharpened, like, why did they sharpen the rocks before I got here?
Right. I
And
always feel that way.
and then you step on warm sand. And to me, that's the suffering of life, is that it's okay that there's sharp rocks. And there are ways that you can remember to start putting on your sandals before you go into certain situations, which will ameliorate some of that. But there's also times where there is an acceptance of the sharpness of the rocks that leads to a true gratitude of the sand. And if you think that gratitude can exist in a vacuum in a perfect world, no, it can't. Like, think harder, because it can't. You literally can only have gratitude because you recognize what could have not been there.
Right.
And you, in some areas. So just tell people, just think about that for a second. I know it's very trendy, very exciting, and it's a very optimistic way, but it might be more optimistic to accept what reality is,
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because it's like all of us go through difficult times, and through those difficult times, then we're like, oh wow, like I'm so grateful just for the simple things in
Yeah.
life. These things are going well for me. Maybe they're not easy, but they're going relatively well. And having something like a rapture, apocalypse, a solar flash, where all of a sudden, all the evil or Satan's put away for 1,000 years, or whatever it is that people want to
Yeah.
believe, and
It's
everything.
like, why do we get to cop out on that? Why don't we have to have a difficult journey of understanding the shadow within ourselves, and how we can confront that, and therefore on a greater level how we can confront that in the world by confronting it in ourselves. It seems like a perfect plan. It seems like a perfect setup for our evolution, for our soul evolution, if you believe that. And it makes total sense. But the concept of everything being done for us suddenly, it's like, I mean, that seems kind of neat, but I wouldn't want suddenly to win the lottery and have everything taken away and no one ever argues with me again. I wouldn't want anything like that. I wouldn't want to have all the responsibility taken,
No, because if you think about like anybody who hasn't had responsibility in their life, like what is their personality like? What is their moral compass like?
Yeah.
Nine times out of 10, this is not a person that you want to be associated with, or even be in an elevator with for 30 seconds.
Yeah, people get upset with me when I talk about that. I've talked about the concept that the poor child and the rich child are both, metaphorically speaking, they are both cursed, because you try and explain to me how you teach the child of a billionaire how to have gratitude, how to feel what gratitude is. How on earth do you, like, the things you like, it's possible, I'm sure, but like the things you have to set up and be mindful of to make sure that they understand what not having is, would be an incredibly difficult thing, and it'd be way easier to just leave them with the nanny and just kind of tune out or whatever.
Right.
Whereas, of course, the poor child, they don't have nearly as much, but they understand gratitude, and the way that they have gratitude changes the way that they have friendships and relationships with other people. When you have gratitude, you are a better partner, you're a better friend, you're a better lover, you're a better everything, once you understand what being grateful means.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just there's a duality. I mean, there's
Yeah.
definitely duality in this world, and we have to alchemize and transmute and fend off the yucky energies, and just do our
Yeah.
best and be self-aware. And you know, I'm not knocking solar flash or rapture. Everybody's entitled to their beliefs, but just understand that self-awareness is 100% key to personal and spiritual development, self-awareness, because the people who do not have self-awareness, who are just waiting for, waiting for the sky to fall or whatever it is, just to fix things, that is not going to fix things, because everything that you've done up until this point, there's karma. I mean, like you said, you're not a Buddhist, I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm sure we both, enjoy those principles and believe them. But for me, I feel like every time you put good into the world, it does come back to you. When you put some shit into the world, it comes back to you too.
Yeah.
It's a universal law. It's absolutely a universal law. Okay. So you just came out with a new tarot deck. I want you to tell
I
people.
did.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's called the Nameless Tarot. It's my very first one, and this one's probably one of my favorites, the High Priestess.
Ooh.
Really like this one. I wanted to give a lot more of an accent to the astrology. I wanted to give the astrology, and that even got to a point where, if you know some of the traditional astrology in the tarot, that you'll know that there's some cards which are representative of signs and other ones representative of planets, and I just couldn't accept that. And so I've plugged in some planetary placements. Like, people are going to be like, wait, the tower's Pluto Aries? Like, are you sure about that? But I'm feeling really solid about it. But yeah, I made this deck. I had the idea for it back in 2016. I did a couple, rough sketches, and then I helped a friend of mine create an oracle deck and essentially take her sketches into something. And I was like, I need to actually do that for my own deck. And so I started working on this in 2022. And the design itself was pretty quick. Like, it was pretty divinely inspired. It just kind of all fell in. It was more so the printing press and a bunch of the other things that really took time. But now that I've done it, and now that it's out there, and I've been sending out copies, and people have been telling me about their experiences, now I'm beyond pumped for the next deck, which I want to do as kind of like a stained glass tribal sort of aesthetic, and I want it to be a lot more warmer and maybe more traditional, because this one, these cards look very let's see, they're sort of hyper saturated color. They're very much, a different type of vibe. They're sort of like I don't know, odd, basically, but I like it, and I know some people that really like the saturated, super colorful look. But yeah, I've got maybe 3 or 4 different decks I'm planning to do pretty soon. So it's been a good process, though. I like it.
Yeah, because it's like you created this, and now you actually get to see it manifested into the 3D. I love that. It's, it's like utilitarian, but it also has that pop of color. So I really think people are going to enjoy it. It has like kind of like a 93, 94 vibe, which was last time Saturn was in Pisces anyway. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to pick it up. So where can people order it? Can they go to your website?
They can get it at jaxatlantis.com. I've got the Nameless deck there, and I've also got a tarot class for anyone that wants to learn from beginning to end. It's called Tarot Mastery: The Fool's Journey. So yeah, if you haven't already, definitely check that out.
Is that pre-recorded, or do you do like?
Yeah, it's a pre-recorded masterclass. It's 12 hours, and we essentially go over, I just nerd out. I just nerd out for 12 hours, and I'm just like, yeah, here's the colors, and here's what and that's what I try to do in this deck as well. Is I tried to, like the Hermit, I've got the 9-sided shape. I've got essentially the geometry throughout the deck that I wanted to be kind of like an underlaying, communication, because the geometry and numerology gets left out sometimes.
It does, absolutely.
But anyways, yeah, it's been interesting.
All the elements there. I love that. Yeah. Okay, so how did you start with tarot, and like because you were raised Jehovah's Witness. So like, tell me about your tarot journey, because I know there's a lot of people who are listening right now who are terrified to pick up a tarot deck. Like, you know how many people I've talked to, they're okay with astrology, that they're like, first they were a little afraid, they dipped their toes in, but they're terrified to pick up a deck. So tell us how you got comfortable with all that?
So it's thanks to the Jehovah's Witness organization that that I'm here talking about this right now, that I've created this tarot deck, and for all that, specifically because in a classic Aquarius rising and Aquarius North Node fashion, when someone tells me this is forbidden, I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go ahead and for sure do that now for the rest of my life. But
Yeah.
uh, but uh, but and there's also the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus all in the eighth house. So there's this big thing with me for the things
Wow.
that can't be thought
Taboo.
about, seen, or talked about. That is for a Libra. I have to talk about it. So, anyways, my mother and father were both Jehovah's Witnesses, and they divorced when I was 3. And she stopped being a Jehovah's Witness, but my father like really, stayed in and stayed
Wow.
strong. So I kind of would bounce back between two what became, they're both Aquariuses, by the way. So
Oh my
very strong
gosh.
ideologies. So
Yes.
a hyper open-minded mother and a very closed-minded father. And so there was this extreme polarity that I was trying to balance and find my path between. And it was about 14 that I had first my mom had showed me a tarot deck, and she showed me basically how it worked, and I immediately was fascinated. I had just, as of a couple of years beforehand, about 11 or 12, I had just started having spiritual experiences, which I found incredibly terrifying. Like for
Oh, yeah.
me, seeing
So young.
spirits and it was really terrifying. But there was something about the tarot that I felt like I remembered. Like as soon as I started seeing the images, I was like, wait, hold on, I know this feeling. And it was not one that I'd ever had in this lifetime, but it contextualized everything. It was connected. Like, there clearly had to have been past lives where
I was
tarot was a very big part of it,
I was
because the
gonna
moment
say,
I saw it and I smelled them, and it just, there was something about it. I was like, I remember these images. I remember these concepts. And so she taught me, it's because of her. And I have a dedication in the front of my deck that's like to my mom and to my sister, because my older sister also, experimented with them at the same time. And we all kind of did that, the three of us together. And so that was really interesting. And later that would go on to lead me into astrology. But back then it would be, the astrology side of it was just looking at like the birthday book,
right.
which, for each and every day, and things of that nature. So
It's
yeah, I
all
fell in love though. I
yeah.
really fell in love, and I got the Crow's Magic Tarot by Londa Marks. And you'll actually see, if you look at that deck, a lot of inspiration that guided these, the little blurbs under
Okay. Wow. Okay.
the name.
You guys will have to
I'm gonna
definitely.
unblur it just so I can.
Yeah, I
I
see.
forgot because it looks the same. It literally
Yeah.
looks the same. But I've got these little blurbs, underneath each of the cards, and that concept came from Crow's Magic. I'm surprised more decks haven't done that. But yeah, I really fell in love with that. I tried some other ones, but I stuck with Crow's Magic for up until recent,
Wow.
and now I use this one. But yeah, just I started exploring everything. Tarot, runes, the psychic gift, the reality of ESP by Russell Targ is a really good book for those interested in remote viewing. I really got into Celtic magic and Druidism, and I definitely still feel maybe an ancestral connection to them. I don't feel like I'm necessarily like a practicing Druid or anything, but on a very sort of instinctual level, I feel a deep connection to those types of spirituality.
What I see for you, I know you didn't ask for a reading, so I hope
Yeah, no, I would love to hear it from a
okay.
Capricorn. Yeah, let's go.
So yeah, what I saw for you is that yes, like you were involved like in the 1500s with tarot. That's what I saw right away. I feel like I see you on a ship too, with tarot cards. And then in regards to the Celtic Druid thing, I feel like you were there to kind of like view their spirituality, but you aren't one of them, if that makes sense. It was like
Interesting.
you were studying there for a bit. You were a student, but what I'm feeling is that you were so advanced that you were actually teaching them as well. And then what my guides are saying is that you picked up on languages really quickly in that lifetime. I don't know if you're good at like foreign languages now, but they're saying that you could speak many languages in your past life.
That's very interesting. You might be seeing a lifetime that I have looked back upon before that definitely involved a lot of that type of travel and study, and so that's interesting. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
1500s feels like the time period as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel it very strongly, but I feel like you're completing that lifetime, right?
Yeah.
Because what they're showing me is that you experience, and I feel it, like I feel this like happy bubble in my heart, which is a good thing. It's not like there's tragedy or anything of that sort, but they're saying that you lived a very, very happy lifetime. And they're showing me like, yes, of course you passed away, which would be considered to be young now, but of age then. They're showing me like late 40s, early 50s. But they're saying that you were so full of life that you wanted to continue what you were doing. You were just like
Yeah.
jolly, like not like Santa Claus jolly, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so full of like zest. And here
Yeah.
you are, you're continuing that journey. So like I'm happy for you that you get to revisit that and close this cycle when it's time. But now is not the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I really resonate with that. I absolutely feel that. And this lifetime definitely feels like there's like it's the continuation of a journey. And then there's a close of some parts of the journey, but there is definitely a continuation, and it lasts way into next lifetime as well, for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to say that those cards are great for beginners too, because of how you put the astrology there, and especially people who might have a lot of astrological knowledge or even a basic amount of astrological knowledge, but don't really understand the tarot. So I think that's really going to help a lot of people learn. So for people out there who want to learn, I think this is a great learning deck. Definitely take Jax's class as well. So what else do you have coming up? I know there's something else that you were talking about before we started filming, that you have something fun coming up in the near future?
Yeah, so I'm working on a class, and actually it's the first time where I'm co-teaching with someone and we're still building the idea. I'm normally, as a cardinal, very much like, oh, I had a dream to do a minor aspects class, so I'm doing that. I'm going to start putting out the ads tomorrow. I'll, put it all together as I go. But there's this gal, Atia, with Atia's Tarot, and her and I are essentially going to put together a class that talks about some of the universal laws, and it really is a class though that's going to go into prompts. It's going to be things where if you have maybe had a mystical ghost experience once, or you thought you saw something, you feel a calling to the spiritual world, but you feel sort of confused about where to start because there's just a lot of people with just it's very hard, rigid philosophy and knowledge, and it's not that occulted feeling that you want to find, you want to go seek, basically. That this class is going to have a lot of prompts for things, like different types of meditation exercises, different types of divination exercises, basically a wide variety of things that will prompt you into finding what your own spiritual path is. Rather than saying, here's the rules of existence and here's how to be spiritual, it's going to be like, here's some prompts, figure it, go do your thing, go on your hero's journey and figure it out.
That's incredible. I think that's going to be so helpful to people who are just starting out or who have been on this journey for a while. To be honest, that sounds so interesting to me. And I like
Yeah,
that
thank you.
you're just providing people direction, but not telling them where to go, which is
Yeah.
that's the best kind of teacher. You realize that.
That's a very serious focus for me, because of my background. It's almost like I feel just such a tremendous responsibility to be very thoughtful about how important the language of, like, telling someone what you believe, telling them versus telling them what is, like telling them that there is a solar flash coming and that it is the end, versus I believe in the solar flash, and my belief about it is based on this, and I think that, and I think this. And so that language is a big deal. Those little things. Yeah.
Providing an open-minded safe space, a true safe
Yeah.
space, a true safe space, not just cutting things off as, the mainstream media likes to call it safe space. We're not creating barriers or boundaries. All you're
Yeah.
doing there is just creating an open space for open minds, open hearts, And because everybody's experience is vastly different. And yes, there's a lot of overlap. But yeah, we all are on our own journey. We're definitely on our
Yeah.
own journey. Anyways, anything else you wanted to part with? Because I'm going to ask you one more question, but I always leave the open mic. Anything else you wanted to tell us about that's coming up for you before we go?
Yeah, I was gonna see, do you want me to just draw a couple cards and see what your collective, like specifically the collective of the folks here at
Yeah,
Problematic,
perfect.
what
I
like
love
have
it.
going
Let's
on right
let's
now?
let's do it.
Let's do
Out of the nameless
let's
tarot. Let's do it. Can't wait.
let's draw a few, see what wants to come up. And then I'm very excited to hear what this question is.
Okay.
I have curiosity. And so this feels like it's the upcoming week from whenever this is posted.
That would be right.
And there will be like a new moon pretty
Mhm.
much connected with this. Okay, so first one, Two of Swords, Moon Libra. This is definitely a moment, especially in the very recent past, where you've been weighing something out and someone very close to you, possibly a relationship, possibly a business partnership, but someone that is connected to you in a very serious way has been weighing something out as well. And you might feel this illusion that you have to choose left or right, that you have to choose black or white, that you've got to go in one of these two directions. And I think what the star, which is the present moment, is saying is that this is actually a time to make your own path. And sometimes you have to withdraw your investment from the classic path to the left or the one to the right. And you've got to, in this middle path, there's going to be so many more thorns. There's going to be a lot more difficulty. You're going to have so much more responsibility because you're making it as you go and you're following honesty, which is always the most difficult thing rather than following, incentive from either side. So that's going to be difficult, but this is a way to heal yourself through your own individuality and your own authenticity. And to follow that path, though, leads you to King of Wands, which is the true sovereignty, a sovereignty so strong that it radiates from you and that everyone's like, oh, I know what that person's about before they even meet you.
Yeah.
Because we always talk about, of course, communicated boundaries and how important that is. But a really powerful thing is when you emanate that boundary without ever needing to
Yes.
speak it.
Yes. You
And
walk it.
authentic, just those authentic, like Lady D,
Mhm.
there's some people that I'm sure show up to her with respect,
Yeah.
who normally may have been much more willing to be really pushy and like sort of prod on people's boundaries because she kind of emanates like a very intense, loud, fiery strength in that way. And so it's a very powerful thing. So basically, make your choice. Don't make one of the two choices, make your choice is the reading for this upcoming week.
That's all about authenticity. I hope everybody listens and remembers that. It's
Yeah.
so super important, living in our truth. And that was my question for you. You live in your truth. How can the people watching, I know so many of them are living in their authenticity and in their truth with all the pressures of family, coworkers, friends. I'm not in this predicament, but we have some viewers who have spouses who don't particularly like what they do in their spiritual journey. What advice can you give, or maybe what was the best wisdom nugget given to you that helps you radiate, like you're saying, radiate your light and live in that authenticity?
I guess that's a big one. I would say a couple things to think about would be, for one thing, I don't think we should be so excited to lose a lot of people in our life. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I feel like there's a certain willingness that we need to have. There's a certain willingness that some people are not going to be able to connect with you, or at least they think that they won't be able to as you really are. Sometimes it's difficult because you essentially are in the position where if you want to show up as you really are, you'll have to love yourself enough to be unapologetic, to admit who you really are to yourself, that your thoughts, of course, will become your words, and your words will become your actions. All three of those things, if they're in alignment, you're pretty much good to go. Like, sounds too reductive, but that's pretty much what it comes down to. You find what you believe, you say what you believe, and then you do what you believe, and things become pretty clear. At the same time, there are people who will sometimes exit your life or feel that they have to because of that, and then they can re-enter later. That's possible. It can happen. It doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen immediately. But that definitely happens. And I would say it might seem like, yeah, but I don't want to lose this relationship I have. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose this. And it's like, do you have any idea what the price of your victory will be? Like, if you win instead, if you keep it, like, to slowly essentially poison yourself with dishonesty,
Yeah.
you can live forever in purgatory, or you can live a few days in heaven. And I think, like, live a few days in heaven, like, go for this life as you really are, because it's a miracle. It's the most incredible thing you could ever experience.
That's true. I love that. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Jax, for coming on. Guys, if you want to get in contact with him, it's jaxatlantis.com. I'll leave all the links there at the bottom. I'll leave his Instagram page, his website, his YouTube page. He does daily updates on Instagram and YouTube. And thanks again, Jax. We'll see you
Yeah,
soon.
thanks for having me on.
Of course, anytime.